Like if you looked at that account, you'd be like, that guy's a stand-up guy.
Oh my. Okay, yes.
At the very least, he supports Warren. Lives are going to be seen as worth less than American lives, so our American lives in particular lost, and that could drive some of this. On the one hand, certainly I think Donald Trump is maybe not one to de-escalate, but on the other, I don't know if people are really itching for a war with Iran in any practical sense, and so they may try to find some way to de-escalate here. Maybe Trump can be convinced that it makes him look magnanimous, but I'm really not sure what's going to happen. There's not going to be, it's likely not going to be an immediate response tonight. Donald Trump is kind of postponing his remarks till tomorrow. Some people on social media say that's a positive sign, but right now, at least, I don't think we can really predict until we know the true nature of what happened in terms of the devastation. Because if there's large-scale devastation and it affects Americans, there might be public pressure for retaliation, if only amongst the Trump base, and that might force his hand. Whereas if it's, again, just devastation against military equipment and maybe Iraqis are affected, there might not be a sense that blood is needed in return. And so I think that's going to be really important to see.
Yeah. I have no idea. It's very like, it seems like the Iranian response was already a little bit more than some people thought it might be, or were maybe hoping that it would be, just because it was like direct and unambiguous.
Yeah, and they took responsibility for it immediately.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
That they, that like it seemed like there was a lot of speculation that they might, that they might hit some regional target, in a way that's been done in the past, where there'd be plausible deniability, and it would be ambiguous enough that they could like count it as like having responded. But so I don't know. It really seems like a lot of this is about just like what Trump decides to do, and it seems like history shows that a lot of that depends literally on the most recent person he's talked to.
Yeah, no, 100%.
What a time to be alive.
Or like what he's most recently seen on Fox News, right? Like you can chart it sometimes, right? Like Trump watches Hannity, and then like 42 minutes later, he's tweeting out something that he basically heard on Hannity, right? Or another Fox program, or another thing he's read or talked to. 100%. Ben's not exaggerating. He really is very impressionable, and not in a good way necessarily.
The last time things were flaring up with Iran, we might have, as disgusted as this is to say, we might have literally been saved by Tucker Carlson.
Yeah. It's actually true.
Yeah.
And he, again, I don't normally say the sentence, white nationalism aside, had a relatively, normal take. I hate to kind of be like, Tucker Carlson was right? Question mark, because I think that sentence follows the question mark, but yeah. So all that being said, though, depends who Donald Trump's last spoken to. This is the world we live in. In that case, then, there are definitely a few war hawks within the administration, right? Bolton's out, and I was saying as soon as Bolton came in, I was like, we're probably going to see a war in Iran under Bolton's tenure, and I was astounded to find out I was wrong on that by like a couple weeks, or sorry, more like a month. But like, there are still people to worry about within the administration, though. Yes, who probably are still interested in this progressing forward.
Yeah. This is very true. Thank God Bolton is out, but it's, the people who are there, and it's also worth remembering that there are a lot of people who like would normally be in the room where the offices are just literally unfilled right now.
Yeah, someone in chat just had a good point. There's currently no defense secretary. That is right. There is no defense secretary currently, technically. So yeah, I mean, Christo, you're a doctor of history, right? Was that your specialty? Because I was gonna ask,
yeah.
Has that happened before? Has there been a near war or an announcement on war that could occur tomorrow morning that happened without a Secretary of Defense?
Not that I can think of. It's a high profile position. So you think here in Canada and in the United States, it's one of those core 3 or 4 cabinet positions that you kind of always want filled. And gaps in tenure do happen. People leave. People are forced out. What have you from cabinet positions? It's usually filled rather quickly. And so I can't think of any long-term period in Canada, at least, where we would go more than a few days without a defense minister. It's like if Hajit Sarjan just resigned or was fired for whatever reason, we'd probably find out who his replacement was before we find out that he was gone, right?
Oh,
it would be that quick, right? Yeah. It'd be like Justin Trudeau is like, Hajit Sarjan is stepping down for personal reasons. Meet his replacement, Mr. or Mrs. whoever, right? And that would be how it would normally be done. So it is rather interesting that with Trump, there's this endemic of unfilled positions in his administration, and that's due in part to, I think, the disorganization of the Trump administration, but also the fact that it's such a revolving door, right? They're always filling gaps. People are always coming in and either getting fired or resigning. And so it doesn't surprise me that even in key cabinet posts, he's having a hard time filling them, because I think a lot of people don't want to serve under him, given the volatility, given the fact that it taints you. So, I could see it's not that surprising that Donald Trump wouldn't have a Secretary of Defense, but also, with things like this, the president personally has a lot of power. Yeah. Technically, acts of war are supposed to be, approved by the Senate and the House, but the commander-in-chief, quote unquote, has a lot of day-to-day, discretion over the actions of the U.S. military. So the Secretary of Defense is important, but the president ultimately still calls the literal and figurative shots.
Do you think that it's completely just the revolving door effect, or is some of it a little bit of apathy? Almost like I feel like there's positions they don't fill because they're like, or like, we don't really need that.
Yeah, I mean, like they, the White House press secretary is the most obvious example.
Yeah, like, that one feels like spite. Like, I think the reason is spite, almost.
Well, yeah, I mean, you think that's a tough position for a conventional president, right? Like, that's a tough job, even with a president with high approval ratings and no real scandals. And you think for someone like Donald Trump, who's a pathological liar and is unpopular and has a series of personal and governmental scandals, that it's got to be a death march of a job. So I think, it's a mixture of not being able to find a lot of people to do it, and then also maybe just being like, screw it. Like, the media doesn't trust us anyway, doesn't respect us anyway. It's all quote unquote fake news. So why legitimize it by picking another press secretary? I think that's a perfectly reasonable point, that it is a bit of spite to a certain degree.
Yeah. No, it does make perfect sense. I am definitely very curious about the machinations going on behind the scenes right now. Like, do you know of other figures that are probably either going to, like, I'd like to say on the surface, first off, the American populace, it seems statistically does not want this. Right? No. Like, every poll that I'm looking at right now, everything that I'm reading seems to have an indication that the average American doesn't want to go to war with Iran, right? Would it just be like Trump's hardcore base that is interested in this? Like,
I mean, that's a really interesting question, because I know, of course, that Trump does have a hardcore base that'll follow him through all of his, transformations, but his original base, didn't want anything like this, right?
No,
that
it
was
all
his,
about nationalism, right? Isolationism, trade wars, make America great
it was
again.
an internalist nationalism rather than an expansionist one, right? Less Monroe Doctrine and more like a splendid isolationism, exactly.
Absolutely,
and I think that it sort of tied in because remember, Trump made a huge deal throughout the entirety of Obama's presidency that like we're going to have a war with Iraq and it's going to be due to government incompetence, and that Hillary Clinton's going to be the war hawk, and I'm actually going to be the one that brings our troops home because I don't believe in these foreign wars. America's been policing the world on our dime for too long, and so
there are literally tweets from 2012 where Trump accuses Obama of planning to start a war with Iran in order to win re-election.
There's
100%
a tweet for everything.
Well, I don't know if you guys saw this, but Richard Spencer, of all people, tonight was like, I regret supporting Trump.
What?
Right?
He lost the Nazis, so no.
Yeah, he lost that crucial Nazi vote, right? And so I don't know if you can find that. I don't know if but like I definitely saw that. I don't know if that's fake or not. If it is, I apologize, but it definitely looks like he's taking the anti-war position. Like if you looked at that account, you'd be like, that guy's a stand-up guy.
Oh my. Okay, yes.
At the very least, he supports Warren, right?
Let me read this out to viewers who are just listening on their phones or in the cars. To the people of Iran, this is, by the way, Richard Spencer, the Nazi, the one that you've seen in the meme where he gets punched over and over in the face. Yeah, that Richard Spencer. To the people of Iran, there are millions of Americans who do not want war, who do not hate you, and who respect your nation and its history. After our traitorous elite is brought to justice, we hope to achieve peace, reconciliation, and forgiveness.
God, Comrade Spencer.
Yeah, it ends with a dove. Like a little dove.
Like, I know Iran is literally the land of the Aryans, but still, right?
Oh, is that why?
I don't know. There's some mythology of Iran being connected to the Aryan history, like the Persian drawing that, because Persia, is this quasi-West. They'll claim it as a quasi-Western civilization, in a sense, much like they do with ancient Greece, to draw this like line between like the venerable European tradition. But in any case, it's exceptional, and I think that goes to what Ben says, which is that at least part of Trump's base was like traditional right-wing Republican, rah rah rah, we're the best. That's part of Trump's base, but part of Trump's base, like the quote-unquote alt-right, wasn't a traditional neoconservatism. It wasn't traditional biblical Christianity. We have to be in the Middle East because Israel has to be free for the biblical prophecy. It's not George Bushian conservatism. But so it is interesting to see what Trump's base will do here. I don't know if they'll leave him. They'll probably just grumble and then fall in line. But it is interesting to see how this plays in Trump land, because it's not going to be a universally popular move. And I think in some ways, like, traditional neoconservatives are going to be the most supportive. Look at the stock market. Which corporations are going to benefit from this, right?
Yes,
like Raytheon. And Raytheon is not a Trump, like, these corporations are not alt-right. They're as establishment as you can get. And they're going to make billions off a war. And so I think they'll be the ones that are more likely to support, a war versus like 4chan. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, they're more concerned with getting their Yang Gang dollars right now than kind of. One interesting thing about what you just talked about, though, is the fact that Trump's base, sections of it, certainly, I totally agree with you, are going to be way more isolationist, protectionist, not engaging with this. So if you think then that it's going to be the neocon kind of wing of the Republican Party, do you not think that there will be also some war hawkish liberals who might think like this was inevitable? Like I'm not going to cast aspersions and say that like if Hillary Clinton was the president that we still wouldn't have gone down this similar path, Like I think we might have even gone down it sooner. I don't know.
I mean, I think that I don't know. My sense is that like with Hillary as president, we might go down a similar path. I don't think this particular like
methodology.
Yeah, this particular methodology would have been used, right? Like, I think that, like...
oh, you mean brazen? Without warning? By the way, we just assassinated the second most important person in an autonomous nation. Yeah.
Like, I don't think she would have done this specific thing. I mean, would she have done other things that had the effect of escalated tensions with Iran? Yeah, quite possibly, right? But I think, like, this thing, this particular thing seems to have been a product of Donald Trump and his special brand.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, like, some people on Twitter were noting that, like, we skipped the manufacturing consent portion here.
Absolutely, we did.
Where you try to justify, and that's very much what, like, an establishment politician, be it like a George Bush or a Barack Obama or a Hillary Clinton would do. They would try to find a pretext. They would try to get along as many international allies as they could. They'd go to Canada, Britain, France, etc., NATO broadly, and they'd try to find a formalized solution. And it could lead to even worse devastation. But, like, I don't think the United States would do what they did, like as Ben said, in the manner they did it with a Clinton president, or even say like a Rubio or Cruz or Kasich or Jeb Bush presidency either. I don't know if I see this particular nature of action. It seems uniquely Trumpian to do it this way. And that's not me, of course, defending any of the other people, but to contextualize it, right? And so I saw something here, not to interrupt. Now, it's from the Spectator Index. It's got 1.3 million followers on Twitter, and it says that a Ukrainian plane, a passenger plane, has just crashed in Iran. So I don't know if we want to look into this, because that seems like maybe it's random, but, like, my goodness, what a coincidence. So, like, so I'm seeing this from Turkey's English newspaper, the Daily Sabah. I don't know what's happening here. Let me Google this.
Yeah, I'm going to check out Tasnim first, which is the Iranian state news. Which, by the way, it's been a great source for anyone who doesn't know. They have an English website for basically what is the official, I'd say, it's general state propaganda explanation for their side of the story. Like, if you want to have direct news.
Yeah, Focus Break is noting it in the comments.
Oh, wow.
That venerable source. Apparently it says here, the San Diego Tribune is tweeting that apparently Iranian state TV is reporting that 108 has crashed near airport in capital Tehran. I don't know if it has anything to do with anything, but what a day for that to happen, right?
That can't, like, I don't want to put on my tinfoil hat here, but, like, that.
No, I mean, like, look,
that can't be a coincidence.
And, Boeing has such great technology. That's right.
Is that sarcasm?
Yeah.
Okay, I was like, I hope so. Oh wow, that must be breaking. It's not popping up in any major news source yet.
Yeah, it's like I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it just kind of pop up. Okay, it's just okay. Apparently, according to Bloomberg News at 10:33, it said, and I can send you guys. I'll send the link in the chat here for everybody because this is Bloomberg News. We know Michael Bloomberg is the be all and end all of good sources. But it says that that 10 minutes ago it was due to technical issues, at least right now. So I don't know. It's a crazy coincidence, but I just wanted to drop because I don't know if people were seeing that.
You know what's funny? If that turns out to be 100% coincidence, wow, Boeing.
Yeah.
Really bad day for yet another Boeing plane to crash. You know?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if the both of you are fans of Richard Wolff, but he had a really great expose into
very much.
The
I love Richard. Yeah,
absolute corporate greed that has led to the decisions behind Boeing being the company they are. Yeah,
Jesus, Boeing, read the room. That's a quality.
Wow.
That's a quality comment.
Yeah, that's
yeah. Sorry for interrupting, guys. I just wanted to.
No. Yeah, please give us breaking news as it happens. That's why people are watching this in the first place, right? Right, chat.
Yeah.
Can I ask you questions as a guest? Of course you can. I see a lot of lefty commentators avoiding talking about Iran's imperial project in Iraq and Syria. Is it avoid to giving ammo to warmongers? I think I'll say this first before letting the good professors, I should say, or you're not technically a professor, Dr. So you know what? We're going to drop all credentials. We're just men here. We're just a couple of men having a conversation. One low pleb and a couple of high esteemed super brains.
Nah.
But I will say this entire situation has kind of put leftist media, speaking as someone who works in a really weird version of it, in a weird position, because I do not want to defend, say, the theocratic government, the Ayatollah of Iran, in any way, shape, or form. Right? I think the roots of the revolution in Iran had very good objectives. After all, they were trying to dispose the Shah, who was a brutal dictator to the country, just plundering the resources for the good of the imperialist American nation. But at the same time, yeah, I don't want to sit here and defend the Iranian government. Any number of human rights abuses, and yes, like you're mentioning, their various projects for expansionism. I don't think it's just. I think maybe because we're trying to push back against. I don't know. Why don't you guys answer that as well? Maybe we're. This is introspective. This is more.
So, I guess I'd say a couple things about this. One is that. One is that it depends what you mean by imperialist. Because if you just mean like bad, unjustified, aggressive policies in other countries, then sure, right? Mm-hmm. Iran has done, the Islamic Republic, has done terrible things in the region, especially in like the Syrian civil war, helping to shape the really brutal response to the initial democratic uprising there. But I'm also a little hesitant to use the I word there because there's like a sort of more precise way of using the word imperialism, which is not like just a sort of like stuff that's aggressive and bad and we disapprove of, but it's like a sort of systemic economic relationship between like the core and the periphery of the world system, where resources are extracted and in that more systemic sense, even though Iran is certainly a regional bully in many ways, it's still very much part of that like global economic periphery. Donald Parkinson is an editor of Cosmonaut magazine. I saw him post about this, and he said some stuff about that that made sense to me. But that's also kind of a semantic issue. I think the larger thing is like, look, of course, Iran has a brutal, repressive, right-wing theocratic government. They've like after the 1979 revolution, which initially had lots of potential. It could have gone in a very different direction, but like it went in this one. And the regime in Iran, killed tons and tons of Iranian leftists and it's been very repressed by Kurds. And, there's lots of crimes that you can, justly attribute there. But I think that what I would emphasize is that, one, like in a crisis, I think there's something good about getting right to the point, right? Like that instead of sort of doing 5 paragraphs on how theocracy is bad, which you can pretty much assume that everybody that you're talking to agrees with.
Maybe that's why leftists aren't talking about it, because it feels like it would just kind of be.
You can just get right to, whoa, let's not do this, right? And I think there's some merit to that, right? So Bernie Sanders, who's a secular Jewish social democrat, and I'm going to take a wild stab in the dark and say he does not favor Islamic theocracy. But like, one of the things that I really appreciated about his response versus the other Democratic candidates was that he really went straight to the point, right? He didn't do this whole, he's an evil terrorist and this and that, but it was like, no, don't do this, right? And I guess the last thing I would say is that there's no conflict between. It's not like opposing U.S. aggression in the Middle East somehow means that you've like abandoned, solidarity with with the Iranian left or democracy advocates or anything like that. In fact, I'd argue just the opposite, because one of many objections, it's not necessarily the main one or even in the top 10, but one of many good objections to U.S. aggression against Iran is that it has the effect of undermining those efforts, because when the most powerful country in the world attacks your country, the effect of that is to get people to rally around the government, and that really sets back democratic and leftist dissidents within Iran.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you too in regards to the fact that we don't have to do the scale of eyeballs thing here where we're just comparing atrocities. I mean, if anyone is committing atrocities on a global scale, it's definitely probably the United States. They're very good at it. Even in this precision drone strike, I think they also ended up killing a bunch of Iraqis as well. Which just typical cannon fodder. Over 500,000 to 1 million estimated civilians dead in the first Iraq War. Like, there's a huge amount of reasons to be avoiding this, and not just what Ben mentioned, which is of course the suppression of leftist any kind of leftist factions in the country itself, but like the victims of this overwhelmingly are probably going to be anyone who's on the lower end of the scale, right? People who have to join the military. Is military service mandatory in Iran? I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure. No, I totally agree. And I think it's fair to say that Iran, Israel, like the Saudi Arabia, like those are regional powers in the Middle East, like Turkey, and they've all in various ways committed acts of aggression against their neighbors or within their borders, against minorities, against dissidents, or what have you. And so it's important to recognize that this is not an innocent country in that sense that they are, 100% pure. I think that's fair to note. But I do think that, those are almost separate discussions from my perspective. I mean, the enduring image of this, which is all you need to know, is, and we've talked about this on our last stream here on this channel, where there's that map of U.S. bases encircling the United States. And I mean, Iran has an immense amount of influence in the Middle East. They do. In a sense, you might, under a looser, I agree with Ben that imperialism has a precise definition, but in a sense, they do play one could argue like a quasi-imperialistic role, given that they are a leading force in their region.
Did you enjoy what you just watched and now crave more nectar of the damned? Did you know that if you're watching on YouTube, you're only getting half the surfy experience? We upload all of our content commercial and censorship free to our Patreon. Due to the general demonetization of our videos, we now upload half of our original content directly to those who can help us produce this show. Want even more nectar than that? Well, come join us at twitch.tv/TheSerfsTV, where we do weekly live streams, debates, interviews, AMAs, and more. If you're an Amazon Prime member, you can help support our show 100% free by subscribing to our Twitch channel. So come join us, be merry, and know that your support is helping us do great things. Like pay rent and eat. We would first and foremost like to thank our god, Nicholas Marks. We worship at your temple. We would like to thank our monarch, Elsie Hupp. Your generosity has made this entire thing possible. We would like to thank our lords, Ricky Pilgrim, I'm Raft, and Michaela Schmidt. You are the pillars of our organization. To our Knights of the Surf Table, Paul Parfit, Daniel Kahn, Fair Tahan, Clement Chutskoff, Schizosaurus, Josh Mickelson, Dr. Zayas, Cooper Pilot, Andre Lynn Epperly, Dylan Bith, Terry, Todd Buckingham, Jed Lewis, Todd Lajeunesse.